It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Wednesday, Gary, hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Well, we're here. We're ready to go.
Yes, we are.
All right. She answered a question correctly yesterday. In fact, correctly, the only way that she could answer the question yesterday. Here we go.
I wanted to ask about the trial going on in Arkansas with Hunter Biden and the child support. Are the president and First Lady monitoring that? And how come they haven't acknowledged the seventh grandchild?
I'm not going to speak to that from here.
Yeah. I don't have anything. I don't know. Hunter who? What?
By the way, that was the correct way to answer the. I hate to say it, but she answered that in the correct way.
Well,
let me get into why the president.
She's blinking 12, so twice per day she's going to be correct. I don't have an answer for that. I'm not going to speak about that. I ain't talking about that.
What she should have. Now, I guess she could have answered a little bit better. What, are you out of your mind? You think I'm going to answer that question?
Are you smoking weed?
Right.
I'm not answering that question.
Well, let me tell you how really the president really doesn't care about his children or grandchildren. It's not just that one.
Yeah. Look, he doesn't really care about anybody. He doesn't care about Hunter. Why would he care about Hunter's child? What? Are you guys insane? Do you know who he is?
And she got pounded yesterday for saying that remember on Monday that the parolee program is the reason why the illegal immigration is down 90%.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, well, no, actually what it is the encounters at the border actually went down, but just for the parolee program. We're not talking about anything else, which was, being allowed in. But the reason is because last October, this is the beautiful part of it. Like, okay, we're doing our job and we're stopping people from coming into the country. If you come in from those, I think it's Venezuela and 3 other countries. If you put in an application, you get in automatically, $30,000 a month.
Yeah,
that's why it's gone down.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's I'm telling you. Well, let's start out. Job openings near a 2-year low.
Yeah. Well, this is where you're gonna start seeing that die off. That adjustment. Yeah. And it's a number of things that influence, everything that's going on. There was an interesting discussion about AI, and all the analysts are, on Wall Street now are, going over the whole AI thing. Well, what are we dealing with? Look, we can't figure out the humans. You're never going to figure out AI. This whole thing is, it's like, oh, we're afraid of the robots. Well, let's try and figure out the humans who are writing. Right now there's a big back and forth about the chat software, right? Chat GPT and other AI software. Well, it's basically collecting whatever humans have put together. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just collecting it.
Right.
And then, now we're looking at businesses going in and going, oh, even in Hollywood, the writers are going, hey, that's not fair. Chat GPT wrote a much better script than I did. They're all freaking out. Man, I'd go watch that movie. And then, I don't know if it was inevitable that we would get here this soon, but it was inevitable we'd get here. And you look at the number of jobs where everybody was, I'm quiet quitting. My boss isn't going to own me. You're fired. I'm what? I'm what? You're fired. Yeah. Chat GPT. He's cooking the French fries and the hamburger over there. A lot better than you did. And this is, where we are. You know, everybody, I'm not going back to work in the office. I just bought these pajamas.
Will they input into AI quiet quitting?
AI doesn't have to quiet quit because AI knows one thing: work.
Will there be
Get smarter.
Will there be ESG programs for AI?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all that's going to be factored in. You know why? Because of stupid humans.
I'm just sitting here just laughing to myself. I mean, here we're doing a national radio show beginning, and I'm asking these stupid questions. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I mean, as to what the left would be concerned with AI.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, AI is no problem according to the energy secretary because we've got we have too many
jobs
in this country. We'll get to
there
that.
There are too many jobs.
We'll get to that audio coming up. I mean, she is absolutely clueless. Think about this. She's the energy secretary, and she's the one promoting the insane agenda for all electric vehicles and solar and wind and everything else. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was Senator Hawley that asked her, do you know who produces a majority of lithium? And she said, no, I don't. It's China. Do you know who produces the majority of cobalt, that we import? That's a major, the biggest producer. No, I don't. It's China. He starts going through the different materials that we have to do. And he says, so you're giving up U.S. energy security for China to control what we do here? No answer.
Right.
She's but think about this. The energy sector, here you have what the Democrats and the liberals want to do, the greatest transformation of energy forced by government ever in the history of the United States. That's going to make electricity much more expensive. Oh, did you see National Grid in New York raising electricity prices? They're putting in now to the Public Commission, 17% raise in electricity they want in New York State.
Under my plan to cap and trade, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket.
It's what the people of the United States voted for.
Yes.
And it's what the people of New York State have voted for.
Right.
We understand, not if you're conservative.
Right. And the people of California.
Yes.
They just signed it into law 2036. Starting in 2036, all big rigs have to be EVs. Now, you can walk to the store and get your milk, except for the problem is the milk won't be there.
But think about this. One of the biggest government forcing the transition of energy, and it makes us dependent on what is arguably our number one enemy in the world. This is the insanity of and they just ignore it. It's like there was no back and forth. And I would criticize Hawley because I think he wasn't focusing on, he kept saying, and you want to do this for your radical climate agenda. You don't need to do that. I mean, we've already said that a billion times. What you need to say is you're willing to give up energy security and losing American jobs to enrich China and make China more in control of us. For some reason, I don't know why, because that's the easiest one to go to. And I understand they get into their, Karine Jean Pierre crutches of radical climate change, radical climate change, radical climate change. But that is not nearly as effective as saying we are trading our energy security and we are trading our jobs in order to enrich our number one enemy, China. That's how Republicans should be addressing this.
No, you're absolutely right, because right now where China is, they rely on the world for energy, but that is going to turn quickly with stupid moves like we're seeing from this administration. Those mandates will turn the table completely around. Then you look at Afghanistan, also has sizable lithium fields, and while they don't have what China has and what Chile has, what they do have is the building of a super terrorism state right now. And if you want to talk about ISIS gaining more power, if they were to ever take control of Afghanistan, You look at Afghanistan right now, while the Taliban has control right now, if ISIS really wanted to do what they did in Mosul under al-Baghdadi, when the fall of Mosul, which lasted almost 3 years, they controlled the energy in that sector, in that region, and it was because they captured Mosul. If they were to capture Afghanistan, now I don't know if anybody's predicting that to happen, but if one day ISIS took control, then they would have the makings of a caliphate. They would have the makings of something that they wanted, that al-Baghdadi actually was trying to get when they were in Mosul. And this is the kind of thing where you look at the dangers all around us, and we choose to bow to our enemy over and over again.
Yeah, it's amazing. And they can't answer the question. And I thought, and we'll play the back and forth between her and Josh Hawley, because it was, it's just amazing that here's the energy secretary that has no idea, that wants to make this great transformation, to stop mining, to stop the production of oil and natural gas in the United States. And she's the energy secretary and cannot tell you. Energy secretary?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she cannot tell you where we're going to get the materials from. She doesn't know.
She doesn't know.
This is how...
She doesn't know how it works.
This is how clueless members of the cabinet are, completely clueless. They don't even know.
No.
They don't even know. Okay, we're going to do this. Well, where are you going to get it from? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know. That's
the sun and the wind. It will bring us everything we need. This is how far gone they are.
But U.S. job openings dropped to their lowest level in nearly 2 years in March, and layoffs rose sharply.
Yeah,
layoffs rose to a seasonally adjusted 1.8 million in March from the prior month. Rose to a seasonally adjusted 1.8 million in March from the prior month, up from a revised 1.6 million in February. The increase was led by losses in construction, leisure, and hospitality, and healthcare industry sectors that have driven job growth in recent months. Like tech, finance, and other white-collar industries also cooled down. So seasonally adjusted 9.6 million job openings in March. That's the other thing, too, that drove Josh Hawley crazy was Helen said, there are plenty of, we have too many jobs. So we close these mining jobs down. They can get jobs anywhere.
Right.
And he just went, oh, my God. He was just like, I can't believe. Most outrageous thing you could possibly imagine, that these blue-collar jobs, you don't care about the blue. And we said this a long time ago. We said this when Biden took office. And we said this to every union worker out there about their union leadership. You're paying your union leadership to work against your best interests.
Yeah, to kill your jobs.
Right. Then again, we're paying taxes for the federal government right now to work against our best interest and make our lives harder and tougher.
Yes. And
we are paying our government right now to make us less energy secure, economically secure, and
national security.
And national security also make us less secure from the national security standpoint. And we're paying our taxes to make the United States weaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we choose this.
Yep.
We choose this.
We got a great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
Logging miles during the hot summer months can put a serious strain on you and your truck's health. Did you know pollutants and allergens in the air outside can enter your cab through the HVAC system without you even cracking a window? That's why it's important to check those cabin air filters. Inhaling dirty and polluted air can cause distress if you suffer from allergies or a respiratory illness. Not to mention the distraction dirty cabin air filters can cause by blocking proper airflow to your AC system when you need it most. Breathe easy when the air in your cab is fresh. This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. 866-90 Red Eye. I had mind blank. It's the back and forth between Josh Hawley was with the Interior Secretary, not the,
okay.
Yeah. So I'd said Energy Secretary, and I had mind blank there for a minute, but I do have an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm elderly.
Oh,
Eric
yeah.
Harley,
Yeah.
Gary McNamara.
I'm elderly, so.
You're loudly quitting. I quit!
You can't fire me. I quit! By the way, that was from the band Blotto.
Yeah.
That had one of the first videos on MTV, day one.
Also from everybody who was fired in the 80s and 90s.
Hey, also, we'll talk about the going after Justice Thomas. It really is amazing here, the Democrats, and they were just pounded yesterday, talking about what all the justices, have done in their past. Here's the interesting thing. You've got Democrats screaming for transparency on the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. There is no branch of government that has more transparency right now than the Supreme Court.
Yeah, right.
Because we know why they do every single decision. You know exactly why they did it.
No, this is
legally why they did it.
Yeah.
You know the majority,
right.
And you know what the minority believes on it. There is no branch of government more transparent than the Supreme Court. It's just it's gaslighting is what's going on with the Democrats and Clarence Thomas right now. Mm-hmm. They just want the Democrats don't like the fact that they don't control every branch of government. It's that simple.
Well, that's it. I mean, what you see from Al Franken, if anybody's even paying attention to it, the Supreme Court is illegitimate. He's not even the first one. He's in a long line of liberals who want, basically, because they're not getting their way, we want to change the fundamentals of the entire nation. And these are the people that, will scream and then tell you something else is a right when it isn't a right. Yeah. All of this, again, applies over and over again. You can see it as they try and whittle away at the Constitution. It was only a matter of time before it would be divulged what other more liberal justices have done or received, if you want to call them gifts or whatever you want to call them. It was only a matter of time because the media just went on the whole Justice Thomas thing, just went full on. They're still on it. Well, I bet that starts to go away.
Well, it does start going away because they're going through what all the liberal justices have done in the trips that they've taken and everything else. And said, look, and they're coming out saying, we don't believe that they're corrupt. Why is Thomas corrupt?
Exactly.
If they're not corrupt, if we don't believe they're corrupt, we don't believe Thomas is corrupt.
Right.
And the fact is, we know exactly what Thomas believes on everything.
Right. It's not like he had $90,000 in cash in his freezer.
No, but I mean, but in general, as to what they do, at what their role in government is, the Supreme Court is the most transparent of any branch of government.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Biden administration transparent?
Right.
No, it's pathological lies every single day.
Right.
The Supreme Court, you know exactly what they think. You know what both sides think. They write it down. You see it. You can read it. You know every decision they make, and you can look at it and say it's based in law or it's not based in law.
Right.
But you have full transparency on every issue that they cover. And if there is even an ounce of in a particular case of a conflict of interest, both sides scream to high heavens on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't have a branch of government with more transparency than the Supreme Court of the United States.
No, you don't.
Five hours a night, And still not enough. Listen to our podcast, available on the app and on our website, rediradioshow.com.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Democrats going after Clarence Thomas. They had a hearing on it yesterday. You know, the Senate Judiciary Committee, you know, they want to introduce a bill that would control the ethics of the Supreme Court, which, again, the Supreme Court, I'm sure, would just ignore. They would continue with, what they do already. And one of the reasons is because the Congress has no authority over the Supreme Court to dictate how they act.
Right.
And so I want to play this audio cut, though, and this is actually Lindsey Graham talking to three of the witnesses there and asking them, if they knew about things that have gone on in the past. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are all the witnesses aware of the fact that when Justice Roberts declined the invitation of Chairman Durbin, that his letter was signed by the entire court? Are all of you aware of that? Mr. Fogel, do you think that was a wise decision?
Thank you, Senator. I think I said in my statement that I respect it. I think it was sincere. I think the problem, and I think it's significant, and I will grant that it was signed by all 9 of the justices. That's
my point.
Yeah, but
I just want people to understand that the court as a whole has a
right.
problem with this, whether they're right or wrong. I don't, that's.
I'm sorry, Senator. I just wanted to say one other thing, if it's all right.
Sure.
I think it's significant that they all signed it. I think it doesn't suggest that that's all that all of them would do. It's a point about which they all reached consensus.
I sort of, like you and Mr. Payne mentioned something sort of struck a nerve with me. I'm not into micromanaging the court, Judge McCasey, but when you look at what other branches do versus the court, Mr. Payne, you say it's pretty obvious they have a sort of a lower threshold, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So what I would urge the court to do is take this moment to instill more public confidence. I'm not going to vote for any of these bills, but I think we'd all be better off if they did that. And here's what I want to kind of explain to people. In 1998, Justice Ginsburg donated a signed copy of her decision in VMI case where you had to admit women to a state school. And it was auctioned off at a fundraiser supporting the National Organization of Women's Legal Defense Fund. Now, I didn't know that until this moment. Do you all agree that if Judge Alito signed the Dobbs decision and gave it to the Susan B. Anthony pro-life organization to raise money, all hell would break loose in this country? You agree with that, Ms. Forrest?
So would I agree that if there was a sale of
if Judge Alito signed the Dobbs decision, autographs it, gave it to the SBA group to raise money, it'd be all hell would break loose?
Oh, yes, and I certainly would agree that would be a problem. And in fact, I think that's one of the reasons that Congress needs to play an active role today.
Why didn't all hell break loose in 1998?
I'm not sure what the reaction was.
Well, when Justice Ginsburg signed a copy of the VMI decision for the National Organization of Women's Legal Defense Fund. Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Justice Ginsburg, one of the greatest people to serve on the court, received an award from the National Democratic Women's Club. Can you imagine what would happen if Justice Roberts received the award from a Republican women's club? I think we may read more about it. Justice Ginsburg was given a $1 million award by the Berggruen Institute, and this is annual philosophy and culture award for major achievements in advancing ideas that shape the world. Now, she didn't get the money personally, but they gave her $1 million to give to other people. Does anybody have a problem with that? Does everybody have a problem with that? Well, I'm going to assume silence means yes.
take that as a yeah.
And the point is, and he wasn't the only Republican to point it out, but the liberal justices have done way more. That if you're going to set the standard for Clarence Thomas by what he did, which was hang out with a friend, that you can bring up things that you obviously the Democrats, if they were consistent, would have been screaming about what the liberal justices did if they were really concerned about transparency and ethics in the Supreme Court. And that's the point that they brought up. So this isn't going to go anywhere. It's just the fact that they are desperate. They know that the Supreme Court is right now solidly constructionist, and they're doing anything they can to destroy the legitimacy of the court, which is completely legitimate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously, as we've said before, when you actually look at the Supreme Court of the United States compared to the other branches of government, they are the most transparent. Congress certainly isn't as transparent. We know things are done in back rooms on a consistent basis. You don't get to see what they're talking about. You don't know. You hear what they state to you, but you don't get to see the inner workings. In the Supreme Court, you get to see the inner workings. You get to actually know every case that they hear and what their arguments are, and then you get to see their arguments written down for the entire world to see. So you know where they stand.
This is a desperate attempt by the left. They want to try and turn the tide if they can. They thought, they had this big moment of victory when Breyer stepped down, but of course it wasn't going to change the makeup of the court.
Oh, and they also talked about, I forgot who it was yesterday, talked about the fact that there was a Democrat group that spent millions of dollars advertising to convince Breyer to retire.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you had a number of Democrats who were fairly open about it, but spending that kind of money, campaigning in that way, really, to get him to retire. And they almost lost their mind. Remember when he said the first time it was kind of asked openly, one of the first times, Breyer was like, well, when the time is right, I will be retiring. I don't want to be on the Supreme Court until the point that I die. I don't want to be here the rest of my life. But when the time is right, I'll retire. And the left lost their ever-loving mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they see Justice Thomas as they see this as an easy get. Well, the problem is now we're going to have to vet all the justices, including RBG, and determine, wait a minute, is that acceptable behavior or not? Is this corruption or not? I don't believe it's corruption.
Now let's play more audio from yesterday's hearing, and this is Ted Cruz at the judiciary hearing on ethics and an ethics code for Supreme Court justices.
The attack that my Democrat colleagues breathlessly repeat is that Clarence Thomas stayed at the vacation home of a very close friend of his, a successful Texas businessman, flew on his plane, and went on his yacht. Well, if that's the standard, going and traveling and being paid for by others, then guess what? Just about every Supreme Court justice has done so, and done so in much greater numbers. Justice Thomas was appointed in 1991. In the time since then, he's taken 109 reported trips, 5 international trips. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed in 1993, 2 years later. In the time she was on the court, she took 157 trips, including 28 international trips. Mr. Payne, yes or no, do you think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was corrupt?
No.
Nor do I. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was not alone. Justice Stephen Breyer, appointed the year later in 1994, took 233 reported trips, including 63 international trips. Again, yes or no, Mr. Payne, do you think Stephen Breyer was corrupt?
No.
Nor do I. I would point out Justice Kagan has done the same thing. Justice Sotomayor has done the same thing. And yet none of my Democrat colleagues care, because this is a political attack directed at a justice they hate. And by the way, let's spend a moment focusing on Justice Stephen Breyer, a delightful human being, someone I know personally, someone who served decades on the court. Justice Stephen Breyer repeatedly traveled on the penny of a prominent Democratic billionaire, the Pritzker family. Now, J.B. Pritzker is the Democrat governor of the state of Illinois, from which our chairman hails. I would be shocked if the chairman of this committee has not had multiple meals with the Pritzker family. Justice Breyer was a longtime member of the board that awarded the Pritzker Architecture Prize. Now, what did that mean? That meant Justice Breyer traveled on the dime of these Democrat billionaires. In 2019, Justice Breyer traveled to New York City, to Vancouver, and Paris. In 2018, Justice Breyer traveled to Ireland and Spain. In 2016, he traveled to New York, Spain, and France. In 2013, he traveled to Norway, Sweden, Denmark. In 2012, he traveled to Beijing and to London. All of this paid for by the Pritzker Foundation. Now, none of my Democrat colleagues are mad about this, and let me be clear. I'm not suggesting Justice Breyer is corrupt. What I'm suggesting is this committee is corrupt, because this is a kangaroo circus, and I will note we had 15 Senate Democrats, including 6 members of this committee, send a letter to the Appropriations Committee threatening to cut off the funding for security at the Supreme Court. The left is willing to threaten the lives of the justices.
There you go. That's Ted Cruz yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, this entire effort, I'm really shocked that it hadn't been addressed until yesterday. Ted Cruz did, I think, an excellent job in pointing out the hypocrisy and the fact that if we're going to do this, then great. Let's scrutinize every single one of them. And also, the committee chair. Let's break it down. If you're going to consider these to be gifts, if you're going to consider this to be corruption, let's break it all down. I think that's why you'll see the media hit the brakes on this after yesterday, because they realize, oh, this isn't going to go well. It's not just about the liberal justices. It's about every member of Congress. It's about every member, every liberal member of the Senate. And what do they get? And how often are they wine and dined, at somebody else's expense? How often does that happen?
And it went on over and over again with Republican senators bringing up all these things and then saying, the justices that took trips, financed by the ACLU and things like that, and asking the question, do you believe these organizations were attempting to bribe these justices? And so there was so much of that coming out where it's like you can't win this one you can't look at this and say, Justice Thomas is acting in such an outrageous way that isn't commonplace in the Supreme Court from the liberal justices.
Yeah.
You can't make that argument.
Well, the liberals are so weak. I mean, think about what they've done just in recent years. Mike Pence won't have dinner alone with a woman that is not his wife. That's extreme. And also, #MeToo. I mean, it's over and over again. It's like watching a really horrible game of Pong. For those under the age of 90, Pong was the very first video game, and it was horrible. And this is what, this is every single time they turn around, they run into a brick wall. That brick wall was built by Ted Cruz yesterday.
And don't forget, followed up by Space Invaders.
Exactly. That was better. It was improving.
It was better. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carney, and I'm Gary McNamara, 86690 Red Eye. Well, we have 27 states now that are upset about the Biden administration's new mortgage rule. And, some of the numbers that we saw, remember it was if you had and this is where if you have a good credit rating, you're going to have to pay extra fees for people that have bad credit ratings so they can get a loan and don't have to pay the extra fees or get a mortgage. And we heard first it was like $40 a month extra, then $70. Wait till you hear one of the numbers that Fox came out, some of the research that they found yesterday, how much your mortgage payment could go up. It's mind-boggling. Coming up.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 86690 Red Eye. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, another day. Another day, and more retailers moving out of San Francisco. Saks, Nordstrom. Several national retailers closing their stores in downtown San Francisco. Nordstrom announced Tuesday morning that they are closing down 2 of their downtown San Francisco stores after 35 years. Wow.
This is happening at such an accelerated rate. We knew it was going to happen because there wasn't going to be a turnaround. They weren't going to start making it, all of a sudden, start making it safer in these areas. That's what the people voted for. It's what you chose. And if you're screaming now, it's too late. Because it was never going to be the case in San Francisco or Portland or any of these other blue cities that they were going to usher in conservatives. That was never going to happen. So what were you going to get? People who pretend like they care up until Election Day. Oh, we're going to get on top of it. No, you're not. And there's no choice. These companies have to leave. And if the big ones aren't going to stay, the small ones can't stay either.
No.
People don't feel safe. Their workers aren't safe. I don't know how you do it every day, go into a zone like that. I think about the areas of Portland where people talk about it and say, and I talked to one person who had moved from Portland to another state and said there are areas of town you just can't go to. And if that's accurate and true, how do you go to work? You can't. Not safely. San Francisco, the same thing. And this is what these companies will tell you. It's not just about the fact that they're getting, looted on a regular basis. It's also about the fact that people don't want to work there anymore because they don't feel safe. Customers don't want to go there because they don't feel safe. And you just watch your profits being carried out the door over and over again. Nope. It's not, here's the thing. It's not an inexpensive thing to do to get up and leave when you're talking about companies that are the size of these companies. It's not. It's not like, well, we'll just lock the door and we'll walk out. It doesn't work that way. It's enormously expensive to do, but it's also less expensive than the alternative, which is staying. You can't make a profit there you have to go. There's no other way around it. And when that happens more and more, you're seeing, the tech jobs that left the Bay Area during COVID. You and I talked about it. All right, is this going to be temporary? Is it as a result of COVID, people not wanting to live, in major cities on top of each other because of things like COVID, and maybe this happens again, and maybe people want more space, and we'll see where it goes. Well, no. Once the tech industry, honestly, to be qualified to work in the tech industry, you're going to have some very, very particular skills, and you're going to have to be very good at and then when you have them, you can pretty much name your price, which includes, I want to work from home, and I want to be able to live anywhere. And you saw that. You saw the office space now that's the vacancies in office buildings in the Bay Area is growing.
The CEO said of Nordstrom, we've spent more than 35 years serving customers in downtown San Francisco, building relationships with them and investing in the local community. But as many as you know, the dynamics of downtown San Francisco have changed dramatically over the past several years, impacting customer foot traffic to our stores and the ability to operate successfully. The last day of business will be July 1st, for the Market Street rack will be July 1st, and the San Francisco Center location will close at the end of August. The Westfield Mall, where the downtown Nordstrom is located, and its owner said the closure underscores a deteriorating situation in downtown San Francisco. A growing number of retailers and businesses are leaving the area due to the unsafe conditions for customers, retailers, and employees, coupled with the fact that these significant issues are preventing an economic recovery of the area, a spokesperson said. The owner has actively engaged with city leaders for many years to express our serious concerns, which are shared by our customers and retailers. We have urged the city to find solutions to the key issues and lack of enforcement again. So there you go. And they just, they don't respond. And this is where, you and I've talked about when you look at Chicago and you look at San Francisco and you look at Los Angeles and you look at Portland and you just say to yourself, you don't sit there and Republicans are not going to be elected. We saw what happened in Chicago. We need to get rid of this mayor because things aren't safe, and we need to have law enforcement here, and they elect a more liberal candidate who now will continue with the defund the police and ensure that Chicago is a place where businesses and people don't want to go. And you say to yourself, my God, when is it, how will this change? And I don't know. How long will it take? I am old enough. I am old enough to remember when I became a talk show host in 1989. You know what some of the biggest topics were? Biggest topics were redlining. Where banks wouldn't give mortgages to people in the inner city, and they viewed it as racism. And also the other racism that came up was the fact that retailers weren't in downtown areas.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big deal.
That was a big deal. And then since that time, as we know, retailers have moved, supermarkets have moved. They have found the market. The cities became, you look at the 1990s and the crime bill that was passed, and then crime went down in a lot of these cities, and boom, they started rebounding, and businesses wanted to go there to make a profit.
Right.
Now you look at it, and it is it's not a fact that they didn't want to fight crime back then. They just weren't able to, and so you needed to go in with new laws and everything else, and they had the tools then to make their city safe, and they did.
Yeah,
but there was never an intent from the politicians that lead the city and these mayors and these DAs. Their intent was not to make the city less safe. They just didn't have the tools to do it. Well, they got the tools to do it. They did it. Businesses started moving in. It became a much more successful economic areas. We talked about the remember the free trade zones that also were set up in cities and everything else to ensure that they boom. And then you've got these major liberal cities where the politicians come in and basically say, no, we're going to make our cities hell on earth. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And then the population gets upset, and a mayor loses a primary in Chicago, and they elect somebody who is even more radical than she is. And you throw up your hands and you go, well, they want to commit suicide. The city of Chicago wishes to commit suicide.
Yeah. They want it to be done.
And I know the voting was low and everything else. I understand that. And I'm sure many of our listeners listening right now on our great affiliate, WLS, don't agree with that. And they want Chicago to be a safe place, and they want Chicago to boom. I worked in Chicago for a short time. I love Chicago. I love Illinois. Absolutely love it.
Everybody wants these cities to thrive. Everybody wants these cities to do better.
Well, not everybody.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem, is that you're not going to change it unless you do bring in a conservative philosophy.
Yeah, it's not going to change.
There's zero chance of that happening.
And so I look at, for Portland, I mean, how are they ever going to, San Francisco, Portland, I mean, these really, really radical left cities here that are still embracing the insanity that started with defund the police, and they keep expanding it and expanding it and expanding it, and businesses keep moving. When will a business say, okay, it's time to come back again? What will be that sign?
I don't know. We'll see that in our lifetime.
But
look how long it took back when it was being talked about then. What had to happen was a massive reform that was national. It was nationwide.
It was.
We are going to enforce the law. We are going to clean up crime. We are going to make our cities safe. We're far from that. We're far from that. They're pushing to make camping, living in a tent, a right.
Oh, yeah.
And then give the people in the tent the right to sue somebody if you ask them to move.
Right.
You can't talk to them. Good. Portland deserves to die. It deserves, as a city, to just fail. Because it's what you choose.
It's what you choose, yeah. We're not wishing it upon them. We're just observing.
You deserve it if you choose it. If this is what you want. If the people you voted for are pushing for that, you voted for this. It's what you want. You deserve it.
The politicians in Portland and San Francisco want the cities to fail. They want the cities to become hell on earth. That's what they want. And the people voting for them.
The people that voted for this, they deserve what's coming. Yeah. You voted for this. You wanted this. Don't say you didn't.
Yeah, don't be a Fauci or a Weingarten.
I didn't have any idea that. Yeah, you did. This isn't new. The defunding the police thing was years ago. It's been going on for a long, long time. It's got to the boiling point, and now you're going to be alone in a city of empty buildings.
And Portland is another city that I love. I lived in Portland and loved.
It's a beautiful area where people are making the choice for it to end.
To destroy. Their goal is to destroy Portland, destroy San Francisco, destroy Chicago.
This is what you wanted.
Destroy New York.
If you voted that way, it's what you wanted. You were asking for this. There's no other way to say it. There's no other way to say it. That is the very blunt truth. That is reality. You asked for this. You voted for this.
866-90 Red Eye.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, Concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company, but there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. 866-90 Red Eye. Welcome and good morning. Let's go to Bob in Alabama. We're just talking about more retail outlets moving out of the city of San Francisco. Bob in Atlanta, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi. Not in Atlanta, in Alabama. Hi.
Hi. I want to come to the defense of the voter. I am retired in Alabama right now, but I grew up in Chicago and spent a lot of time there. Chicago has not had a free and fair election in my lifetime. For instance, Lori Lightfoot just lost her re-election. I know for a fact that she ticked off, at a minimum, 3 aldermen. Now, a Chicago alderman is basically a mafia boss. And those aldermen could have gone to their
Okay, all right.
allies.
Again, they vote on a consistent basis. The Democrats, we understand the machine there, but people are actually voting.
You do have people voting for this.
People are actually voting for it. I know people want to make the excuse, we know the Democratic machine is extremely powerful. We understand that.
Yeah, we get the corruption.
Right. But the fact is, people are voting for this.
Yeah.
Not all people.
No.
But the majority of people voted for it.
We were very clear. I was very clear.
Yes.
If you voted for these people, you voted for this. This is what you chose.
Yep. Let's go to John in Lebanon, Oregon. John, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi.
How you doing?
Very good.
Hey, I live about 75 miles south of Portland, and the problem Oregon has is that the whole state is dominated by Portland, Salem, and Eugene. Those 3 cities have the total population of the. You got 2/3 of the state voting right now.
We're well aware of that.
We understand the makeup.
Yeah, we understand the makeup of Oregon. We've talked about it. We've talked about many of the counties that wish to secede. That's not our point. The point is people vote for this. You may not vote for this, but the people of Portland voted to make Portland a hell on earth.
Yep. And it's going to keep going that way. There's not going to be this huge uprising of conservatives in Portland.
Right. That's not going to happen. So we understand why these counties say it's hopeless. We want to go. We want to become our own state, or we want to become part of Idaho. We understand that. We understand the dynamics of it. We're simply telling you that there are people that vote for this.
Defund the police, coddle the criminal. Bail reform.
Yeah. These are things.
Let the drug addicts camp where they want to camp, and if you try and come after them, we're going to allow them to sue you.
Mm-hmm. Now, in San Francisco, with some of the Board of Education members that got kicked off.
Yep.
Apparently, the public had enough there.
Well,
and said, okay,
that would be my question. Where do you actually draw the real line of real reform?
I don't know if Democrats are okay with crime. I don't know how you solve the problem.
I really don't. And I mean, because this is the insanity. Over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, it continues to get worse. We've had elections since this all began, a number of them. You had a choice, and you had plenty of chances to make a different choice. And this is what you chose.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE, if you'd like to get in. We understand, I mean, the calls are what I expected so far on it. Well, it's not all the voters. Well, the political machine runs everything. We understand that. The point is, we don't know what the point of, we don't know how they're ever going to revive themselves, how that change is ever going to happen.
It's not going to happen in those cities.
In order to have a political machine, you do have to have a number of voters support that political machine.
Yep.
And a number of donors support that political machine.
Yep.
And it does show that the Democrats in a Democrat town where there was no Republican actually running, it was all Democrats running.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, it's. That's the point. Now we can get into the minutia of it as the caller. Well, Portland and Eugene and Salem control everything. We know that. We're just simply saying
on a state level, we understand the mix. We get that. That's separate from this conversation. And my statement, I qualified very clearly, and I'll say it again. If you voted for this, this is what you're going to get.
Right. And in Chicago, somebody had a vote. The machine may be powerful. The machine may get people that will say, yes, this is what we want, and we're completely ignorant, but we're going to vote anyway because of a political favor. Whatever. You can say whatever you want, but the Democrats control everything there, and that's the thing that we've talked about. When is it going to change?
Right. Look,
when will donors stop supporting? What is if you're a big donor to the Chicago Democratic machine, what do you wish to accomplish?
The party has officially endorsed the city of Chicago because in the summer of 24,
yeah, that's a great point.
They're going to be there showing the entire world what their party is made of. They chose Chicago. I think they should have a multi-city approach. San Francisco, Portland, Chicago.
Let's put it this way: when you look at let's look at the national Democratic machine. If you want to make that point, the national Democratic machine is when you look at where they stand on the issues, is not where a significant portion of Democratic voters actually stand. Yet they still vote them in.
Right.
On the actual issues that they, what they believe in. The majority of Democrats don't want open borders. They don't want what's happening. We've seen over the last couple of days now, and Governor Abbott responded to Lori Lightfoot saying, talk to your boss, talk to the president. He's the one that set this entire thing up. We all know it. The public knows it. Democrats know it. We looked at why the economy is failing, why the border is in trouble. All the polls show, even when the majority of Democrats go, the Democrats.
Yep.
They know it. So everybody knows it. So if we want to make excuses, we can do that. Well, it's a machine. it's still any machine is still run and supported by people. And I would have to ask any big Democrat donor in Chicago, what is your goal?
Right.
A machine can only work if there's donations and there's donors. Well, what do the donors want? What do the donors want in Oregon? What's the point? What is the point of Portland now? What is the point of San Francisco now? What is the point of New York now?
It's lost on me completely. Right. And I know you look at it, the number of people that are leaving these areas make it very clear. Because those individuals likely didn't vote for this.
Well, look at Bragg. Bragg gets in office and says, okay, you voted me in. You want what I want. All right. If you commit a armed robbery with a gun, we won't charge you with a felony unless you shoot the gun. Right. But if you point the gun in somebody's face, well, that won't be a felony.
Right.
Do you think the majority of Democratic voters agree with that position? No. In New York? No. But they voted him in.
If you voted for him, right. It's what you wanted.
But exactly. Think about that. I mean, it's complete, pure insanity. We broke it down a couple of weeks ago. The Democrats want to take guns out of law-abiding citizens, yet they don't want to punish criminals who use the gun.
Right.
You can't have it both ways. You can't make your city a hell on earth and then tell people you have no right to self-protection.
Right. And we don't want as many police on the streets.
Right.
We'll send a counselor to the door.
I mean, it's pure insanity, but people are voting this way. And I don't know. I would have thought that with everything that we're dealing with right now, that the Democratic Party would have lost a significant amount of power in the United States. And maybe they will over the next, I believe they will over the next couple of decades.
I don't know how it can survive.
Right. Yeah. You can't survive consistently with this because the one thing they're doing, and we brought this up before, the Democrats are a party that wishes to alienate people, wishes to divide people. You can't win that way. You can't continually divide people and pit people against each other, victim and oppressor, because we've seen it now. And I think the liberal transgender activist movement is one of the perfect places to look how it tore up the liberal feminist movement out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it just destroyed that. You see it right now. You have Democratic women fighting over whether men have vaginas.
Yeah.
You have Democratic women, feminists, fighting about whether men should compete against women in sports.
Mm-hmm.
Everything the Democrats do divide. You have the Democrats that promote the identity politics, which is judging people by groups and not individuals. The vast majority of Democrats don't do that, unless you're MAGA.
Yeah.
I had to give the exception to the rule. But seriously, the majority of Democrats I know may get angry, but they're civil with me wherever I go.
Mm-hmm.
We have great conversations. In the area that I live, there's a lot of Democrats. Mm-hmm. And when I talk to them, and as I've talked about the abortion issue with the number of women that I've talked to, Democrat, and that was some in New York, the rest in Texas, and their arguments were all the same. And when I made my argument, they understood it completely. And they went, okay, yeah, on the whole abortion issue, they understood. And I had every one of them say, okay, well, then the Supreme Court wasn't radical for what they did. They all had to admit it. When you actually engage them in a conversation and they're willing to engage, they're not actually who their party is, yet they continue to vote for the people that do things that they don't want them to do. And why? The Democrats have been successful in demonizing Republicans, which is why I've said, stop the line. I had a friend of mine I got to have a talk with now again. A friend of mine yesterday or the other day posted, a sign of a guy saying, there were 800,000 more people voted in New York than registered voters in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
That's hogwash. You roughly that would have been a national scandal if that was true. And he posted it on social media. Oh, they'll probably keep this quiet. And this is somebody I know who's a Republican conservative critical thinker. But people want to, and is a critical thinker. I go, why do you do that? Well, they do it. Oh, stop lying.
Why would you want to behave like them?
Yeah, because roughly there's 12.3 million registered voters and 8.6 voted in the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm.
But the point that this guy holding up a sign saying the evidence is there. No, it's not. Stop lying.
Yeah.
Stop making stuff up. Stop pushing.
Stop believing everything you see.
Right. And that's where Republicans and conservatives have to have some spine and say, we're not going to lie. We don't need to exaggerate. We've got the truth on our side. But every time Republicans lie, it hurts the credibility of the movement going forward because that's what the Democrats do. And then the answer I get back is, well, the Democrats do it, so we should do it. Oh, good. Then I expect a lot of people jumping off that bridge.
Yeah. No, I don't. I'm not going to behave like they behave.
Well,
I don't subscribe to that.
Well, we don't have to. We don't have to lie. They have to lie. They have to. They can't convince people that what they actually believe is the correct way. That's why you've got Fauci and Weingarten backtracking big time. We weren't for that.
We don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
What's COVID? I mean, this is where we are. The left can get away with that. Nobody's going to call them on it. Now, you don't have the people out defending Fauci and making him the media darling that he once was. That's progress.
No, that is progress. It really is. You don't have that anymore. You don't see anybody.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you don't see the defense of Fauci like you did a while back.
Nope. And I think after yesterday, with the whole Supreme Court thing, and what Ted Cruz brought to the table, the truth, you're going to see fewer media going after Justice Thomas, at least on that issue. It'll be something else. Remember, it was his wife, and now it's him, and tomorrow it will be something else.
Yeah, it'll be something else.
Yeah.
Well, because, look, there's a desperation inside the Democratic Party. And the desperation is the fact that they know they can't convince America on the issues, so they have to basically say that everything is tainted where Republicans are in it.
Yeah.
That the Supreme Court is tainted, that it's illegitimate, that it's not a legitimate branch of government. And because they can't win on the issues. That's why we need to stick to the issues. And you need to do with what the Republicans did yesterday, show the hypocrisy of the Democrats. And again, don't lie.
Right.
Stop lying.
Right.
They need to lie. We don't. It frustrates the daylights out of me because it destroys the credibility and gives the Democrats an issue to hit on. Say, see, they're on this or on this or on that. And you don't need to lie. You can stick to the issues and win every time and tell the truth of what we think about the issues, and you win. You win with the majority of the public. But you cannot be sending differing messages. You can't accuse them of lying and then lie yourself.
Yeah, and to the previous caller, he points out something we pointed out, where you have the major metro areas are blue. They control so many of the votes in certain states until they don't. Eventually, if this kind of policy is going to remain the policy, then who's going to stay? People in tents don't vote. Yeah. You saw it in Chicago. The turnout was much lower. Why is that?
Yeah, very low. Yeah.
Why wasn't there this massive euphoria? It's because the left is destroying itself. I can't tell you when that's going to be. I don't know when that turn's going to be. I know one thing. They're not going to vote for a bunch of conservatives to come into power in these cities. But as long as they vote this way, they're going to get what they vote for.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. 866-90 Red Eye. If you would like to get in on the show. Also coming up, why you see Bud Light, where they lose like 21% of sales.
Yeah,
something like that. I've seen 21 and 26%. I've seen two different stories.
Right.
So, but that's still amazing.
No, that's huge,
and it's still down. And
it's not coming back. It's getting worse.
And now you have more scientific organizations and scientists coming out and saying, sorry, gender and sex is not binary.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get, and like I said, every single day you're seeing more stories on it where people are saying, okay, no, this is pure hogwash.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good that it's good that it's going that way.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that story. What was the other one I want to get to here? And also Paul Stanley, you saw he commented on the whole thing.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I thought, well, coming from a guy who's worn more makeup than the entire cast of The View put together.
The View, I guess the hosts of The View are scabs.
Yeah?
They crossed the picket line.
Well,
they crossed the picket
line. Got to do what you got to do, right?
Because they apologize for not being as smooth as they normally are because their writers are on strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, 866-90 Red Eye. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. So look at this. New York's income sinks nearly $16 billion compared to pre-COVID as residents fleeing at an alarming rate. It's one of the stories we brought you the other day when you actually look at the numbers that are out there on this, and it is pretty mind-boggling. The amount of money that is moving from these states. New York's pandemic-induced exodus is killing the state's bottom line. The Empire State's pool of adjusted gross income shrank by nearly $16 billion in 2021 compared to just 2 years earlier, representing a major loss of potential tax revenue compared to the pre-COVID levels, according to the newly released data from the Internal Revenue Service, cited by the Wall Street Journal. The data shows that New York lost a whopping $24.5 billion in state-adjusted gross income in 2021 as residents relocated. That marked a major uptick from the state's loss of $19.5 billion in 2020 and just $9 billion in 2019. Much of it is wound up in Florida, which has seen a $10 billion windfall in 2021 stemming from the newly arrived New York transplants, according to the data. Wow. And you see it across the board too. I guess the other there's another story out there the other day about the same thing with Texas.
Yeah.
And you're seeing this money move out of the money really is moving out of California, Illinois, and New York.
Well, and it's you look at the entire list of policies in these states, and they are not conducive to great business. They're not conducive to living, existing. but the individual and the business alike is having an issue. Regulations are going to cost everybody, corporations and individuals alike. And at some point, again, you can't afford to stay. And then you throw on the entire, rise in crime. I saw a discussion about it recently, and they talked about how bad it is and what, this one individual who was commenting on a podcast, talking about a story that was in the news. This is somebody who says they've lived in New York City for all of their life. And there was a story in the news, and they brought it up, and they said, I've never seen anything like this. And if you have a family, my question would be, well, how do you stay? How in the world do you stay if there's high crime, if you're worried about your family ever even leaving the home? As this one person was, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you stay. Eventually, you're going to have to move.
I found the numbers from the different states. The latest tax migration data from the IRS shows that the exodus of taxpayers from high-tax states continued from 2021, with California, New York, and Illinois again suffering some of the nation's biggest losses of people and money. California's tax base shrank by nearly $29 billion as the Golden State saw a net loss of 332,000 taxpayers and their dependents during a time of widespread lockdowns. The IRS released on Thursday. In second place, New York, which was hit by a net loss of $24.5 billion and 262 net people leaving. Illinois was third with a net loss of $10.9 billion and 105,000 people. Other high-tax states such as Massachusetts and New Jersey also saw tens of thousands of people moving out during the period. Massachusetts losing $2.6 billion, New Jersey $2.3 billion. On the winning side, Florida reaped the benefits of the wealth migration more than any other state, enjoying a net gain of $39.1 billion in gross income from 256,000 new residents. Texas, which gained $10.9 billion and 175,000 residents, came in second. They were followed by Nevada, $4.6 billion, North Carolina, $4.5, Arizona, $4.4, South Carolina, $4.2, and Tennessee, $4.1 billion. Wow. The data was compiled by comparing the mailing addresses on one year's income tax return to that of the next. So there you go. Even before COVID-19 pandemic, California had already seen a net outflow of people and money to other states. According to previous IRS data, California lost $8 billion in income in 2018 and $8.8 billion in 2019. So there you go.
Yeah.
And by the way, the reparations movement continuing here. I did like I did see a headline that says, let me see here. What was it? Newsom falls silent after calls for him to take executive action on reparations.
Yeah, what are you going to say?
Well,
we have plenty of money.
When they decided to do this whole thing and sent it to the legislature and Newsom was out promoting it, they were probably thinking, well, okay, residents, we'll give them $1,000, $500,
right, yeah,
for a year, and that will be it. And I think the top figure now is $7.6 million per eligible reparations recipient. But it was like California reparations panel to recommend down payments to black residents and abolishing all cash bail. That before they even start with the real payments, they need to start with down payments on it now. And they said, what I love is they go, economists figured out what would be the right amount. Economists. Yes, economists.
Well, because justice has math, right?
Yes.
All right.
The estimates includes, for example, this would be what the down payment before any of the real money's paid. $2,300 per person per year of California residents for the over-policing of black communities.
Okay.
$3,356 per person per year of residence for discriminatory lending and zoning, $13,619 per person per year of residence for injustices and discrimination in health, and $77,000 per person for black-owned business losses and devaluations. The task force also urges in the latest documents for that eligible black Californians receive cash down payments as soon as possible while waiting for the full amount of the money. So, yeah. And by the way, we really appreciate the Democrats in California admitting their racism. It's about time. We've talked about it for the longest time. The Democrats are the ones that practice identity politics, judging people by groups and not individuals. And it's good to see the liberal Democrats of California recognize their racism, their guilt for their racist thoughts, and the willingness to pay reparations for their horrible racism.
And it's also good to know that all racism will come to an end once the payments are made.
Yes. Let's head to you. We go to Rick in Kentucky. Rick, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
How are you guys doing, man? You're cracking me up. I wish it was a joke, but it's not.
No, it's not.
I know, but you gotta laugh before you get furious. But
yeah.
I was that earlier on my way home while I was on the interstate, but you guys have hit on, first of all, an awesome show as usual.
Thanks.
You guys have hit on so many topics tonight. I'm trying to figure out where I was going to start, so I'm going to try and keep it real short, or I could be on here all night with you guys. You were talking a little earlier as far as people, they voted for this. They did. You're seeing polls of like Biden's numbers are a 32, 34, whichever one you look at, approval rating. You see 70% of the population agrees that the company or the country is going in the wrong direction. I like to know who the 20% are, but or the 30% rather. You got 70% of the country people think the country's going in the wrong direction. You know what really scares me more than anything is that this clown in office could still win again. Are people really going to take what's going on serious? You guys have brought it up before. Name one single thing that he has done. Forget the political part of whether you're a Republican or Democrat. Name one thing that this guy has done that's gone in the right direction. And if you have half a brain, I don't care what party you're with, you've got to see this, that it's not right. But the fact that this guy could still win again, and if he does, we're done.
Well, and
he's been in office 30 months, and look at the crap that we talk about and deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that Rick, in 2020, he was the guy. The majority of his party doesn't want him to run again, and he's running.
Exactly.
And that says it all. That says it all right there. And do
you guys think he has a chance to win say he goes against Trump? You think he has a chance to win?
There are so many variables right now, honestly. It's going to depend, of course, on how each of them run their campaign. But it's also going to depend on things like inflation, which isn't going to be at or below 2% between now and November of next year. The economy and everything else that's going on. All the fall of the blue cities that are falling right now, where businesses are leaving and people are leaving, and all of that, they're collapsing. And all of that is going to have an effect, including in Chicago. Now they're going to try and put up the facade long enough to have their convention for a week. But the fact of the matter is that there are so many variables out there. I think anybody would be a fool to try and predict what's going to happen. I would hope that as a nation we could vote him out of office, but again, it depends on how the campaigns are run.
Yeah, I would say, and I was reading an article, and thanks so much for your call, Rick. We really appreciate it. I would say, well, number one, I was reading, you probably read it too, Andrew McCarthy's column the other day that Trump can't win.
Yeah, right.
And he basically said, this is, and he said, look, I've defended Trump. He wrote the book, Ball of Collusion. He said, I've supported Trump and I've criticized Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And but he said the majority of people voting will not be Republican, as is every election.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Where is he going to get the votes?
Right.
Can Donald Trump convince more people to vote for him than voted for him in the last election? Is that possible? Can he get the independents? And his answer was no, he can't. What I would say he left out of the article is, which is the great unknown, is Biden. I mean, there's still.
Yeah.
I don't know how another year and a half before we have an election. A year and a half with inflation, and if we go into recession, the numbers weren't good. You know, the numbers are going in the opposite direction from the job openings and those being laid off. Now it's moving in the wrong direction. The thing on the border is going to get worse here in the next couple of days. You saw Josh Hawley say, well, yeah, he wants the troops. They're only going to be doing administrative stuff. He says they want the troops down there so they can process more people to come into the country.
That's exactly what is going on. I almost mentioned that earlier. We haven't gotten to that point, but they're there to bring more people in.
Right,
they will be there. I mean, that's the entire play here.
But so you've got a couple of wild cards here, and the biggest wild card that you just can't figure out is how people actually will relate a year and a half from now to a completely bumbling Biden.
Yeah,
and everything that goes along with it, from the economy to the border to the price of energy, like I mentioned. I think it's National Grid, they call it in New York, wants a 17% increase in electricity prices. Obama said it. The goal is to skyrocket electricity prices. You're seeing the insanity. When we heard, who was it? I can't remember which. Was it Josh Hawley that was talking to the Interior Secretary? And I don't. Oh, we haven't played that audio yet. I got to play that audio. Okay, I got to play. I played it off the air.
Yeah.
For you, we got to play it where he starts talking about the fact that you're closing mines here. You want to close natural gas and oil, and we're getting it from the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked her, where are we going to get all these? No, he asked her if she knew where all the materials for the batteries and the EVs come from, and she didn't know.
No.
Well, they come from China. So you're saying we need to get rid of it in the United States. We need to close mines. We need to stop oil and natural gas, and we need to kill blue-collar jobs, and we're giving them to China.
Yeah.
And then China will be able to control much more of our economy. And she had no response to that at all.
Because she doesn't know how things work.
Right. Now, that's effective. The Republicans' message and Trump's message can be effective. Be interesting to see what his focus is on CNN if he goes to issues. Because he's really not promoting what he believes yet. He's going after DeSantis for most part. I think it's minor stuff. But what he has to promote is what he accomplished and what he will do. That's something he really hasn't talked about a lot. Maybe at his rallies he's mentioned it more, but the majority of people in the country don't see the rallies.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Let's go to Kenny in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Kenny, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi, Kenny.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Appreciate you listening to me. I'm kind of like your last caller. I've got so many different opinions. I could talk to y'all all night long. But this thing with the voting, you're right. People that vote Democrat, they are so diehard Democrat that I don't care who or what you put as a Democrat in the election, they would vote Democrat no matter what. And it's pitiful because they would actually, they're willing to actually put up with what they're putting up with because they just absolutely refuse to vote Republican because they're so diehard. And it's sad that people actually do that. And I've heard a saying a long time ago when it comes to leaders of whether it be state or government or whatever, you got to put the needs of the many ahead of the wants of the few. And there's so many of them up there that are not doing that.
Well, and they don't really, and that's the problem. And thank you, Kenny, for the call. We greatly appreciate it. The problem is that they really don't care. They don't care what's going on with the broken border. They don't care what's going on with fentanyl. They don't care what's going on with all of the missing children now that have come across the border, and we have no idea where they are. They don't care about the rising crime in major cities. They don't. Their party has endorsed the city of Chicago officially by announcing that's where they're going to have their convention next year. This is what they want, and they're being told by the voters, the people who support them, that they're doing the right thing. On the issues, people say in polls they don't want this, but as long as you're voting for it, you do. And there's no way around that. And until you vote differently, nothing is going to be different.
Call and join the conversation. 1-866-90-RED-EYE. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. I think you came up with the best point so far tonight on the show that wasn't heard on the show.
Yeah, what I say?
That was during the break where you said, I bet you part of the motivation of the Democrats going after Clarence Thomas right now and any other conservative justice is based on their panic because of the court case that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear that would basically review the Chevron case. And for people who don't know, I'm not going to get into the Chevron versus the National Resources Defense Council that was almost 40 years ago. But in that case, the Supreme Court ruled that courts could defer to a federal agency's interpretation of an ambiguous statute as long as that interpretation is reasonable, which is why you've seen a lot of the executive orders that have come out from the president that have been overturned. And the belief is that the conservatives will at least tap down the, what would I say, the broad brush of how it has been used. And this is a case with we'll try to make it as simple as possible. This is about fishing boats that the federal fishery law, which means was passed by the legislature, makes it clear that government can require fishing boats to carry monitors. That's now I'm assuming that's people monitors, right? These are observers who monitor compliance with the fishing management plans. So they said, yes, boats, the federal government can put monitors on fishing boats. So somebody from the federal government can be on your boat. But it never said who has to pay for it.
Right.
It just said federal monitors have to be there. Right. And so they came out and said, all right, the fishing boat, each individual fishing boat has to pay for it. And they say that's cutting into their revenue by 20%. And it's not in the law. The law does not dictate. And when you think about it, the point is that the government says we must have these monitors. The legislation said they can put them on the boat. They didn't say that we have to pay for them. That's almost like the government coming out and stating that police officers must be if
they're called to your house, you have to reimburse them, the city, for the time that they spend at your house during that call.
Okay. I think that's better than the idea I was coming up with. That if police come to your house, but it's not in the law that you have to pay for it.
Right.
The law doesn't dictate it.
They can go.
Right.
The law says that they can go there.
Right.
They can respond. What it was about the what Congress was saying is they have access, like the Coast Guard.
Right.
The Coast Guard can come aboard.
Right. But if the Coast Guard comes, I think that's even a greater one.
This is a direct correlate or direct a comparison. So now we want you to pay for all of the Coast Guard personnel that are on your craft for those moments. Let's just say that they have to inspect a craft and they're on there for an hour. You have to reimburse and pay them for the hour they're on your craft.
Now, if the legislature says you do, then you would.
If the law
if the law says,
that's where the Chevron doctrine comes in. It's basically it allows right now too wide of a berth, they believe, and this is what the one fishing outfit is saying. Look, this whole idea of us, and they're claiming it's costing them 20% of their profits or more, hundreds of dollars per day, because they're having to pay for this monitor to be on board. It's not even the access that they're talking about, saying, hey, we don't want anybody monitoring. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, why do we have to incur this cost? The law was really about access and whether the monitors had the authority to be there. And then they took it and said, yeah, they've got the authority, and you're going to have to pay for it.
And that's what they're saying. In the law, it doesn't say we have to pay for it, and the law has to specifically state that, and it doesn't. And so and when you see the decisions they've already made, I can't think of the name of the case, but the coal issue in, was that Pennsylvania or West Virginia? I forgot what that was, where they said, no, sorry, it wasn't in the law. And the vaccine mandates, the eviction moratorium were all things that the Supreme Court said, sorry, not in the law.
You don't have the authority.
You don't have the authority. It's not in the law.
Right.
Well, it's under Chevron. It's reasonable. No, it's not in the law. So,
right.
And the Supreme Court really seems to be a stickler for, if it's not in the law, it's not up to us to make the decision. And you think about it, that goes from their abortion decision on.
Yeah.
On everything.
If Congress wants that to be the law, Congress has to write the law that way.
And so I think there's a very, very good chance that I would agree with you that there's got to be absolute panic in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
They lose this kind of executive power. I mean, we know this. That, the Democrats love, for example, a Supreme Court that won't interpret the law but will make law. They want to do everything to keep it out of the hands. It's a funny thing is the Democrats in Congress that wants to take away their own authority and give it to somebody else. I have always found that interesting.
Yeah.
When you're a member of Congress, but I think they realize that's how we can do more quickly what we wish to do by an executive order than having to go through the legislative process.
I think that's, when you look at the moves over the years by the EPA, by, just administratively, how many moves they've made where there could be a challenge to the case. What I don't know is why there hasn't been, in terms of really challenging it and putting the whole Chevron doctrine on the line. I don't know. Maybe there was an attempt before and it didn't reach the Supreme Court, but they've decided to hear this one. And so I think there's panic on the left. I think it's what you see from people like Al Franken, but really everybody on the left right now seems to be in panic mode about what's going on, because what this does is it completely undermines their agenda, because the EPA can come in and if they issue a ruling, they have to go through the process. But if they issue the ruling and that's a final rule, then it's law until it's changed, until that rule is changed by another administration, which often in the case of the EPA, doesn't happen. On some things, it has. The whole WOTUS thing has come back, Waters of the United States, and that's, I think, one thing that could be challenged if, depending on where this goes with the Chevron doctrine. But there are basically, you give wide berth to any administration to come in and say, yeah, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, even if Congress didn't write it that way. This would, if the ruling comes down and says, no, you can't do this, what you would hope for is a wide ruling to really flip the whole Chevron doctrine thing, and not a narrow ruling for this case involving this fishery. If they came in and said, well, it's a we're going to make this one ruling based on what this company has to pay, and they shouldn't have to pay that. I don't see that happening. I don't know how you can do this and not.
Well, and again, with where you see the Supreme Court came down on the vaccine mandates,
right.
The way that they
on authority,
they came down on the eviction moratorium. Well, these were all promoted things that were good, and the Supreme Court said doesn't matter whether you believe they're good or not. We're not going to make the judgment whether they're good or not. That's not up to us to do that. That's up to the legislative branch through the people to do that. Mm-hmm. We're just telling you didn't have the authority to do this. This was not in the law, and law should be put forward and enforced. Well, it should be put forward by the legislature, and then if the executive branch wishes to enforce what the legislature has put into effect, that's fine. Or the courts wish to do it, the executive, whatever. Yeah, you can do it that way, or you can implement it and then enforce it because Congress has done it. But you think about it, it's a big deal because you're saying that, because that's like saying police come to your house and then all of a sudden the mayor of the town says, well, you've got to pay every time. When the police come to your house, you have to pay for it.
Right.
Well, the city council didn't pass that.
Right.
And the mayor doesn't have the executive power to do something like that. Now, we're talking local. We're just trying to make a scenario that's closest to what we're dealing with here with the federal government. Mm-hmm. But I think the Democrats absolutely are panicking over that. I think it was the greatest point you made so far tonight. Well, the show isn't over with. Off the air a little while ago when you said that, I went, whoa, that's a great point. The bureaucracy, bureaucracy loses a tremendous amount of power.
It would be really for the left, it would be like an implosion, an administrative implosion, because it would greatly limit the way that rules are made within any administration. And they would have to be, every single administration. Now, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't attempt it. Oh, yeah. It just means that the precedent set, quite possibly, if it goes that direction, would be very, very clear. And you would lose it. You could lose it very, very quickly. And those are the things that scare them the most, because for the left, it undermines the integrity of their entire agenda. Everything on their agenda requires. What did Obama say? I don't need Congress to get cap and trade done. I can do it with the executive pen, and he did.
But the Supreme Court disagreed with him
exactly
on that.
But that's their mentality.
Right. But here it is.
We believe that we can get this done administratively, and through the EPA, we can bring about our own climate change policy, and that's exactly what they've been doing.
But reading this directly from SCOTUS blog, and Amy Howe wrote this, she said that relying on the Chevron, a divided panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit rejected the company's challenge to the rule. Now listen to this. Judge Judith Rogers explained that although the federal fishery law makes clear that the government can require fishing boats to carry monitors, it does not specifically address who must pay for the monitors. Because of the interpretation of the federal fishery law and authorizing industry-funded monitors was a reasonable one, Rogers concluded the court could defer to that interpretation. That because it was reasonable to have you pay for it, even though Congress didn't dictate it,
right?
And that's the problem with the law.
Well,
because I don't know what. Well, we're going to say it's We're going to say it's reasonable for you to create a law, which is in essence creating a fee to tax somebody.
That's the thing.
Based on the fact that what does reasonable mean?
Well, this would be the administration creating the funding mechanism for the enforcement.
Right.
That has to be done through Congress.
It's got to be done through Congress. Legislative branch, that's...
And if Congress wants to do that, say, okay, we're going to impose this new tax, and that tax is designed to going to be the funding mechanism of this enforcement over here, then they can do that. The administration can't. They can't come in and create their own funding mechanism.
You know what it might also stop? And I'm throwing this out, and again, I'm just off the top of my head. I may have missed something here legally, but it might also stop the whole thing of charging people more for mortgages that have a good credit rating.
Oh, yeah, it could.
Because that was a rule change. Well, that's reasonable. We can do that. Sorry, Congress didn't dictate and say that you could charge more fees for people with a better credit rating to pay, in essence, for the mortgages of people with, or help subsidize the mortgages for people with poor credit ratings. Did Congress enact that law? No, but we thought that was reasonable because the goal is to do this. Well, it's not reasonable.
Well, and our goal is to do this, but yet it's still, it's going to do the opposite of the goal for many people. And so all the way around, it has failed, but it is again, they take this wide berth in creating these rules administratively and believe, because they've been getting away with it, that they can do this over and over again. And until the court stops them, they're going to.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. In SCOTUS blog, they talk about Clarence Thomas has been among the doctrine's most vocal critics, arguing that the Chevron deference, quote, rests from the court, the ultimate interpretive authority to say what the law is, and hands it over to the executive branch, which is true.
Yeah.
Yep. Because they get to and that's a great point. The courts actually get to interpret the law, not the executive branch.
Well,
that's a great point.
Well, and
that's a great point.
It's not just interpretation, but you're also creating new law. I mean, you're expanding the law administratively.
I'm guessing he would agree with both of those.
Yeah.
You're interpreting it and creating it. Because by interpreting the law,
then you believe you can create it.
Right,
yeah,
right.
They are, we believe, falsely interpreting the law to say, well, we can do what we want, and therefore further creating more law by doing that.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. Good morning. Welcome. All right. Now, it looks like scientists are getting involved in the discussion now. Here is one. Ivy League professor says it's bad science to believe biological sex is binary. False picture of biology. Uh-oh. He's inciting violence. Is he not?
Mm-hmm.
Princeton University anthropology professor said it's bad science to believe that biological sex is binary, only male and female, by basing it on reproductive cells. The Ivy League professor, Augustin Fuentes, has specialized knowledge in racism, Sex, Gender, and Chasing Monkeys, according to his biography page. He argued in Scientific American magazine on Monday that biological reproduction cells, such as sperm and egg cells, does not delineate whether someone is male or female. Here's why human sex is not binary. He then went on. He then blasted Republicans for questioning Judge Brown Jackson during the Supreme Court confirmation hearings last year. Biden's SCOTUS pick could not provide the definition of the term woman. Can I provide a definition? No, I can't. Not in this context. I'm not a biologist, she said. The human sex rests on a biological binary of making either sperm or eggs underlies all these claims. That is bad science. The professor explains that production of sex cells in animals do not sufficiently describe sex biology in animals, nor is it the definition of a woman or man.
Well, we're not talking animals, we're talking humans.
Yeah, well, and he's full of it.
You want to talk about bad science? Just make it up as you go along?
Yeah, this is bad science. He went on to state that sex was cultural and not only biological.
It's cultural.
No, it's not.
No, it isn't.
And he's not a scientist. I mean, these are scientists getting involved in it, but
they're delusional.
But I want to make this clear because I think I made it sound like he was he had some common sense to him, or the science was getting involved in it. I mean, the so-called scientists are getting involved in it. I was being sarcastic. So-called scientists are getting involved in trying to tell you that that sex is not binary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
Well, the fact of the matter is that, you know, this is also the MO of the left. Oh, we'll just bring scientists into it now. Look, Ivy League scientists. See, told you. There's all the proof you need. No, they can be delusional too. We're going to speak against everything that's been taught up until now. Everything that's been taught up until now is wrong. What else is wrong then?
Well, he's not a scientist. He may have a degree in science. He is not a scientist.
Well, I'd like to talk to the people in his school's math department. I don't believe I owe the IRS what I actually owed the IRS.
Well, but this is getting back to what we have stated. They're trying now. They can't win it on sex, so now they're trying to throw in that sex and gender are different.
Right. Yeah.
No, that gender is what you think you are,
right,
and sex is a biology,
yeah,
and you combine them together, so you can't give a definition of a woman because gender says one thing and sex says the other.
Right.
We're like, sorry, you lost. That's what they were selling even as recently as 10 years ago, because you and I dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you guys understand gender isn't sex? Well, yeah, it is.
And now
the definition changed in the 70s. The definition changed by the radical transgender movement even back then to say, well, gender and sex are different.
And here's the thing. This scientist wants to use in part the procreation of other beings, of other animals, as an example, as to why he will tell you it's not binary. Well, we're not talking other creatures. We're talking human.
The professor later elaborated on his point of view, stating he meant that it was reproductive cells, sperm and eggs, are not the entirety of sex biology in humans and other animals. This is bad science. No, you're bad science. And again, what happened with the radical liberal transgender activist movement is they were attempting to separate gender from sex in order to introduce it in and tell people, well, no, sex is different than gender, so you must accept us because this is gender. Yeah. And now, when they talk about that biological men should play against biological women, and a biological man is a woman, if they believe they are, and that men have vaginas and that men get pregnant, the whole point is, no, a biological man is a biological woman if they say so. That's bad science.
Yeah. Yeah. You're delusional.
To believe in binary nature of sex is to promote discrimination.
Oh, okay. So we're moving away from the science now, are we, Mr. Scientist?
And so not allowing biological males to play sports with biological females is discrimination.
Yeah.
By the way, we discriminate all the time in life.
Yep.
And there's bad discrimination and there's good discrimination.
Yep.
And we discriminate between men and women. It doesn't mean that you treat people in the wrong way. It's simply you acknowledge you discriminate based on science.
We discriminate, at least most critical thinking people still do, between adults and children.
Yes. See, that's discrimination. That's why children should be allowed.
Yeah, my 12-year-old son says he wants a beer. He's going to be sad if I don't give him a beer.
No, that's terrible. You're discriminating. We can't discriminate. Discrimination is bad. Any form of discrimination is bad.
You can't give him a beer. That would be wrong. What if he wants genital mutilation surgery? Well, you don't get a say in that.
I knew one guy who talked about the fact that he would watch pornography and his kids were around. See, he was a better human being because he didn't discriminate.
Yeah. I mean, I would call that borderline abuse, but yeah. And if they're in the room, it's all-out abuse, but that's just me.
And so what I know what he's saying. What he's saying is the biology isn't the only thing. What people think also matters. And that would be gender, and the other is sex, and gender and sex are sort of the same thing. And so they're the totality of gender and sex are in the same classification. Therefore, it's like blah, 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 blah. Shut up. God, just shut up.
Well, it's he feels his own argument falling apart, and then he just goes, discrimination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Bring it on. Continue to argue the point. Go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No problem whatsoever. Let's go.
Paul Stanley from KISS slams child sex reassignment surgery. Sad and a dangerous fad. There you go. There's a big difference between teaching acceptance and normalizing and even encouraging participation in a lifestyle that confuses young children into questioning their sexual identification as though some sort of game, and then parents in some cases allow it, he wrote in his My Thoughts on What I'm Seeing. He then went on to outline his argument on Twitter and Instagram that gender identity is not a game of choice, nor should it be a sad and dangerous fad that simply indulges confused wishes of confused children.
Well, you heard it from the authority. Listen, if I wanted to listen to someone with tons of hair wearing too much makeup that's really loud, I'd watch The View. Thanks, Paul, but we got this.
Wonder what Gene has to say.
I just want to welcome the KISS Army to Red Eye Radio. You can get your Make America Kiss Again hat at kissarmy.com.
So there you go, and I'm happy that the left now wants the debate on this entire issue, and I'm glad the Department of Justice is getting involved in promoting the fact that they believe that children have a right, that children have some type of right to get gender mutilation surgery.
Yeah. If it's gotten to the point that you've woken Paul Stanley up, you know it's getting loud. You know it's getting crazy. But quite frankly, we've noticed the pushback is growing.
Yep. Well, the Department of Justice getting involved in the whole Tennessee thing is just mind-boggling. It just shows you how radical they are.
It does. And then I thought to myself, this is Merrick Garland right here.
Yeah.
This is Merrick Garland right here. And I can't wait for this to get to the Supreme Court, because it will. It's mind-boggling. I mean, it is just mind-boggling. They're fighting for the right, they call it the right, for children to have genital mutilation surgery and irreversible treatment.
Mm-hmm. And they believe they have some sort of high, moral high ground, and that this is the civil rights issue.
That's what they believe.
Of 2023.
Yes.
Shut up.
By the way, why haven't we seen a march on that yet? Has there been one?
Well,
in a major way? I haven't seen one. Maybe I missed it.
No, I mean, they're attacking state capitals. Didn't that happen in Austin the other day, too?
Was it Austin? Yeah,
I think in Austin.
I saw one.
There was one in Austin.
I know it was. I know there was another one outside of Texas,
but it was Austin, so nobody paid attention.
Exactly.
It was like that was.
Yeah. Once they were told there was no weed in there, they left. There's no weed here. Oh. Okay.
All right. I like Ford posted their profits.
Yeah.
All their profits. On gasoline engines.
All right.
Internal combustion engines, all their profits, all their losses, electric vehicles, even with the subsidies.
Let's do this. Let's create the implosion of the automotive industry and the energy sector. Oh, wait, that's exactly what they want.
We'll have that story coming up. 86690 Red Eye.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. At the core of Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is FMCSA's Safety Measurement System, or SMS. The SMS uses 7 safety improvement categories called BASICs to examine a carrier's on-road performance and potential crash risk. The categories of BASICs are unsafe driving, hours of service compliance, driver fitness, controlled substances and alcohol, vehicle maintenance, hazardous materials compliance, and crash indicator. Under FMCSA's old measurement system, carrier performance was assessed in only 4 broad categories. Violations or crashes that have occurred within the previous 24 months of performance data are included in CSA calculations, but more recent events are weighted more heavily than older events. Violations or crashes that have happened within the past 6 months are weighted 33% more than events that occurred 6 to 12 months ago. And violations that are older than a year are weighted 66% less than recent violations. This allows a carrier to improve their CSA score gradually as they see fewer and fewer violations. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 86690 Red Eye. We never got to talk about it yet. I just wanted to at least touch on it. I mean, who knows where it leads or whether it will ever go anywhere. But the story on Jeffrey Epstein and the number of people that met with him after he was a convicted sex offender, including the current director of the CIA, since 2021, had 3 meetings scheduled with Epstein in 2014 when he was Deputy Secretary of State, the documents show. You had a White House counsel under President Obama, had dozens of meetings with Epstein in the years after her White House service and before she became a top lawyer for Goldman Sachs, the president of Bard College, and, a number of others. And it just, that story just keeps getting weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leading to all sorts of conspiracy theories.
Well, that's the thing, is that there's nowhere to go except for, wide open thoughts about, conspiracies of who might be involved and what Epstein might know of anybody's involvement. You think about Epstein, there's really only one thing you're thinking about. And then the question is, all right, what did he know, and did he have dirt on people? What was he going to say about people? Of course, now you have to ask that question. What were they trying to get from him? Because you're going to hear this, well, he was an informant and blah, 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 blah. Or it was a discussion about the case. Well, why would the then Deputy Secretary of State?
Well, I heard this one. Mr. Burns met with Epstein about a decade ago as he was preparing to leave government service, said CIA spokesperson Tammy Thorpe. The director did not know anything about him other than that he was introduced as an expert in the financial services sector and offered general advice on transition to the private sector. They had no relationship. Well, you're not talking about, young college kids looking for advice. You're talking about older men here, and you're like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you're going to get nothing but conspiracy theories out of this. And we'll likely never know the answers.
I did see Rogan promoting the fact that Epstein was running an intelligence operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay.
Well, no, I could hear them trying to make the case that, well, he was an informant. Well, for the CIA or for the State Department? It could go any given conspiracy theory or just theory could go in every direction.
I'll put it this way. Every conspiracy theory you will hear has as much credibility as the next one.
Yes. No, that's it. They're all on equal ground.
I don't know on the line of where the credibility is, but they're all equal in credibility.
There is, and I don't know that there is a line, frankly.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Favorite lyrics I saw yesterday. Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I never realized that lyric was in there. What a great lyric. Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes into hours? As the ship was sinking.
Yeah.
So somebody posted yesterday. I went, wow.
No, there's so much encompassed in that one line.
Yeah, what a great lyric. Yeah, that was just fascinating. I did watch a documentary last year on him. And he was going downhill fast.
Yeah.
I forgot who did the documentary. I can't remember if it was Canadian. I don't even remember where I saw it, where I watched it. I think it was on might have been on Tubi or something like that, or as one of the documentaries. But it was a really, really good documentary, and it was really amazing how many people he actually influenced. I didn't know that. I didn't know Bob Dylan was such a huge fan.
Yeah,
he said every song that Gordon Lightfoot did, he never wanted to end. Like, well, almost that's about as long as the Wreck of the Emmett Fitzgerald was.
Yeah,
almost never did end.
Pretty long song. No, but you think about that, and as in his later years, his appearance had changed.
Yeah.
Greatly, because he always had that. I don't know. He just had almost a larger than life presence, just as an individual. He looked like he came from the Great White North. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He looked. If you were going to picture somebody, that would be the guy. And then you hear his songs, and what's interesting is that his vocal range was, he was very clear baritone, just booming through, and it was that the delivery of his song would, it really did, it required you to think, it required you to experience it. And I think that's really the great success of that kind of, that genre. But really, when you whittle it down, only a handful of people that have ever truly pulled that off, in my opinion.
I will say that's the one thing I miss in music now, and that's really the singer-songwriter. They don't, you think about, for example, Gordon Lightfoot, you mentioned yesterday, Jim Croce, but also you think about it, James Taylor, Carly Simon.
Yeah,
you probably could go on and on and on with just the number of soft, basically soft rock or soft folk singers that had massive hits in the late 70s the late 60s and all the way through, probably into the middle to late 70s, and then that sort of disappeared as a genre. You don't really see that.
Yeah.
And it was so big, and it fit in with all the other music. If You Could Read My Mind would play after a Stones song or The Who on radio back then in Top 40 radio.
Yeah.
And it had just as much impact as a harder song.
Yeah. Right.
You could hear Paul Rogers and Free, All Right Now, for example, and then a Gordon Lightfoot or a Carly Simon song would come in afterwards. Now the DJ would probably, do the transition from an excited voice to a lower voice to introduce it. But they'd actually they'd play back to back.
Yeah.
Or put a jingle in from the hot station, 100 Wild, and then boom, right into the next song. And it's just, that's the one thing that I've always thought about when I go back and since I've been talking with some of my high school chums over the last month or two, because I'm going to my, oh God, I don't want to say it, 50th high school reunion I'm going to in July.
Sock hop, huh?
Well, Potsy and Ralph and Fonz are going to be there, and
bang on the jukebox so we can listen to music.
But the discussion's been actually going on just about the music of that time, and it's when you think, for example, that I think Yellow Brick Road came out 50 years ago, right about now.
Yeah,
I think Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, which I believe was the first single off Yellow Brick Road a half a century ago. And so we get into those discussions, and everybody's talking about, this song was when we were a senior in high school or whatever, and it's like, wow. And I started thinking, wow, there were just so many singer-songwriters back then that even if you were like me into more, and it came from Dad having me, because Dad, he doesn't hate it as much anymore, but he used to, hate, as he called it, animal music. My father just didn't like rock and roll, so there was basically classical music being played in our house all the time. And I think that rubbed off on my love of, prog rock and stuff like that. But I always as I started getting, through my teens, I started liking more hard rock. But I didn't mind at all. I mean, it didn't feel like you were wimping out if you liked a singer-songwriter. You talk about Elton John, Someone Saved My Life Tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that song. Think about how long that song is and what a soft song it is. But I'm not saying the music isn't great, but it's the lyrics. It's Bernie Taupin's lyrics that keep you glued to that tune.
As a kid, it was mesmerizing. And I had not, when I bought the album, one of my first albums, my first one was Draw the Line by Aerosmith, but I bought that one. I had not really experienced that song. And since I had to listen to it on headphones, I mean, I couldn't play the music in the house. I had to, everything I listened to, in fact, including the first Van Halen album, I listened to in headphones because we're not going to play it over the speaker. We had 5 kids in the house and mom and dad, so, you had to put the headphones on. Well, that put me into a different state completely. And, you don't have your cell phone to look down on. There's nothing else. You're looking at the album cover. Sometimes lyrics, if they printed them.
Right. That's a great point.
But you're looking at the artwork to go along with the album cover. And Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy had quite a bit of artwork that would keep you there forever, and you're probably still not going to see it all. But, that, and along with the way that it is, because that type of song requires a certain delivery, you can talk about how certain songs and certain genres are delivered in a way, everything from Gladys Knight to Led Zeppelin and everything else, and there's a certain conviction that you hear in the music. But with singer-songwriters and folk, the strongest of which, they delivered it, and they delivered it through their lyrics, but that created an emotion, and it really had to be matched up with that voice. I mean, Jim Croce and Gordon Lightfoot and others. There was no one else that was going to deliver that.
In my memory, though, the first song that made me really pay attention to lyrics was actually Johnny Cash and A Boy Named Sue.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget the first, and I was a kid listening to that. I remember hearing it, and you're following the lyrics all along, and he's doing it that was the live from the prison.
Yeah.
And so he's doing it, and you hear you're like, wow, this is just, and you're feeling sad, for the kid, Boy Named Sue and all this. And then his father explains it to him, and the son understands and says, if I ever have a kid, I'll name him, Joe, Bill, anything but Sue.
Anything but Sue.
I mean, it was lyrics that actually were, there was a serious message all the way through it. There was a sad message, and you went, oh, now I understand. And then the twist of the comedy at the end. That, to me, was just wonderful, just incredible lyrics when you think about it. And that's where I started really becoming a Johnny Cash fan and seeing what he had done in the past and what he had done in the future. And you think about it going all the way up to, what a great singer-songwriter he was, where even though he didn't write the song, when he did Hurt, his last hit song.
Yeah.
Now, when he did the 9 Inch Nails tune.
He took ownership of that song.
And he took I mean, that's his song.
Yeah.
And even Trent Reznor says it.
Yeah, you have to let that go. If you're Trent Reznor, you have no choice but to let that song go.
Yeah.
It now belongs to Johnny Cash.
And it told, you sit there, and even though it wasn't, it wasn't, self-biographical, it was.
Yeah.
Because he didn't write the lyrics, but still it was. You look back, you go, oh, he has regrets in life of what he did.
But there are so many multiple points that are made through the delivery of the song. And when he sings, I hurt myself today.
Oh.
At that age where he was. And you're thinking on so many different levels at that point. It's just, oh my gosh, I got to sit down. I got to sit down and take this whole thing in. And that's what I think the greatest music really requires you to do.
And well, what the one that really gets me in that song, and you could have it all, My Empire of Dirt.
Yeah.
Oh my! I mean,
well, no, that is the crescendo of the. If you think about it, and where it wasn't before, only his performance created that crescendo.
Yeah,
it's it really is. That's how, that's artistry right there.
Mm-hmm. But you could look at it. I mean, when that song. I mean, because in the video goes through pictures of his life, and so you think about it, and that song was so. I don't know if that song had the same impact for somebody who was 20 years old when that came out as somebody that was my age or your age that went through everything that Johnny Cash had gone through.
Yeah.
That was biographical in all the songs that he did for years.
Right.
That led up to that point that even made that song, I think, more emotional and bigger based on the lyrics of Trent Reznor, though. That's the incredible thing, is that it was like, wow. And when I heard it the first time, I remember thinking to myself, 9 Inch Nails will never own that song again.
Yeah.
That's a Johnny Cash tune. And so, like I said, with Gordon Lightfoot, I mean, that was also just the singer-songwriter out there that would tell a story when singing. And then, to me, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's not nearly as big as it used to be.
Yeah, right.
As an art form. And I think that's sad.
That's it. I mean, it's I've heard concerns of like content creators, the biggest of which manipulating and understanding the algorithms to the point that every word that they say has a return on the algorithm, and they know that. So they're now crafting their words based on what the algorithm is going to do. That, to me, may be a type of artistry, but it's not the kind that appeals to me when you think about music. And I think the same is for a lot of music. It always has been the case that you're writing something that's going to be catchy. You're writing something that, you believe is going to, because if it's repetitive, if the tempo, the cadence is a certain cadence, it's going to render a certain emotion that isn't as deep. It's not necessarily the thoughtful emotion, but it's not a bad emotion. It's just when you look into the stuff that is really meaningful in songwriting and in performance, that's the stuff that stands out, that is really hard to replicate. It's only the greats that can do it.
I'm going to have to go through the paywall of the New York Times to read the story. The headline is How the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald Defied Top 40 Logic, which it did.
No, it did in every way.
It did.
In every way.
There's no way no way you would view that song and say that's going to be a hit when it was a hit. Was 74, I think it was?
Yeah.
No way should that have been a hit.
And then lasted, forever.
Forever.
With the same integrity.
As some artist said, I forgot who it was, said, it's better to have a song that's remembered than a number one song.
I think so. I would think so. Yeah, I would think so.
I don't know if that was number one. I don't think it was, but it was. Shouldn't have been a hit.
Yeah, no. You could argue it got bigger as time went on.
I agree.
More meaningful.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. I got that story for
I got
you.
that story. The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald defied Top 40 Logic. Now I can read it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
you. This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.